How an AI income system could change your retirement timeline. There's a moment that tends to arrive quietly. It doesn't come with an announcement. It shows up when you're reviewing your finances or thinking about the next 10, 15, maybe 20 years. And the thought sounds something like this: I'm not sure this timeline works anymore. Let's slow that down. Because this isn't panic. It's not even fear in the dramatic sense. It's a quiet recalculation. You start looking at your current savings, your expected retirement age, your monthly expenses, and something feels tight. Maybe technically possible, but not comfortable. So let me ask you something directly. What would need to change for your retirement timeline to feel more stable? Not perfect, just more stable. Would you need more savings, more time, or something else entirely? Because most people assume the answer is, I need a bigger number, a larger retirement account, higher returns, more aggressive investing. But what if that's not the only lever available? What if instead of only adjusting the total amount, you adjusted the structure of your income? Let's pause here for a moment, because this is where the conversation shifts. What if one additional, consistent income system, even a modest one, could change the timeline itself? Not eliminate the need for saving, not replace your existing plan, but quietly reshape how the numbers work. That's what we're going to simulate in this video. Traditional retirement planning tends to focus on a single path. You accumulate assets, you reach a target number, and then you begin withdrawing. Everything is built around that transition point. Now let's slow this down, because there's a hidden assumption in that model. It assumes that your income eventually stops. And from that point forward, you rely entirely on what you've built. That creates a very specific kind of pressure, because your future depends on a fixed pool of resources. And that pool has to last for an unknown length of time. Now, if you started early and had decades to build that pool, this system can work very well. But if you're starting later or feel behind, the margin for error becomes smaller. So what do people do? They often try to compensate by increasing risk or hoping for higher returns. And both of those introduce uncertainty. So let's ask a different question. What if retirement planning didn't rely entirely on stopping income? What if instead it included maintaining some level of income? Not full-time work, not high intensity, but structured, lower-effort systems that continue to produce. Now this is where AI changes the conversation, because it allows individuals to build systems that can create value and generate income without requiring constant, manual effort at the same level as traditional work. So instead of relying on a single financial path, you introduce a second one. And that's where the timeline begins to shift. Let's introduce a framework to think about this simulation. I call it the timeline adjustment model, and it's based on a simple idea. Retirement timing is influenced by two variables: how much you've accumulated and how much you need to withdraw. Let's slow that down. Most people focus entirely on the first variable. They try to increase their total savings. But the second variable, withdrawal needs, is just as important. Because if you can reduce how much you need to withdraw each month, you change the entire equation. Now here's where the model becomes interesting. An additional income system, even a modest one, directly reduces your withdrawal needs, which means your existing savings can last longer. Or, you can reach your retirement threshold sooner. Think about it this way. If your plan originally required $5,000 per month, and you build a system that generates $1,000 per month, your required withdrawal drops to $4,000. That's a 20% shift. And that shift compounds over time. So instead of thinking only in terms of how much do I need, you begin to think, how can I reduce what I need through structured income? That's the framework we're going to apply in this simulation. Let's walk through this slowly and clearly. We'll start with a baseline scenario. Imagine someone planning to retire in 12 years. They estimate they'll need $5,000 per month to cover expenses. Based on that, they calculate how much they need to save. Now let's introduce a second variable, an AI-supported income system. But we're going to keep this realistic. We're not assuming rapid success. We're assuming it takes time to build. So let's say it takes 12 to 18 months to develop a system that produces $1,000 per month consistently. Now pause here, because that timeline matters. This is not immediate. It's gradual. Now once that system is in place, step 1 is stabilization. Instead of trying to grow it aggressively, the focus is on maintaining consistency. Because a stable $1,000 per month is more valuable than a fluctuating $2,000. Now step 2 is integration into your financial plan. Let's slow this down. You now have two sources of future support, your savings and your income system. So instead of planning to withdraw $5,000 per month, you adjust that number. You plan to withdraw $4,000 and allow the system to provide the remaining $1,000. Now step 3 is evaluating the impact over time. This is where the simulation becomes meaningful, because reducing withdrawals has a compounding effect on your savings. You're drawing less each month, which means your portfolio lasts longer and potentially continues to grow. Now step 4 is considering timeline flexibility. This is important because you now have options. You could maintain your original retirement date and increase your margin of safety, or you could consider retiring earlier because your required savings threshold is lower. Let's slow that down. This is not about rushing retirement. It's about creating flexibility. Now step 5 is maintaining the system long term. Because the value doesn't come from building it once. It comes from sustaining it over years, even decades, and that requires consistency, not intensity. You continue producing value, refining your approach, keeping the system active. Now let's bring this together. You've built a system over 12 to 18 months. It produces $1,000 per month. You integrate it into your plan, and you maintain it over time. That's the structure we're working with. Let's make this more concrete. Imagine someone named Karen. She's 50, planning to retire at 62. She estimates she'll need $5,000 per month in retirement. Based on her current savings and contributions, she's on track, but just barely. Now Karen builds a simple AI-supported system. She creates content and resources around something she understands well, helping people organize personal budgets and reduce unnecessary expenses. Over time, she builds a small, focused audience. She creates a digital guide priced at $25, and she averages 40 sales per month. That's $1,000. Now let's slow this down. That $1,000 doesn't replace her income. It supplements her future. So when she reaches retirement, instead of withdrawing $5,000 per month, she only needs $4,000 from her savings. Now think about the impact. Over 20 years of retirement, that's $240,000 less withdrawn from her portfolio. And that doesn't even account for potential investment growth. So what changed? Not her entire plan. Just one variable. A consistent, modest income system. And that adjustment shifted her timeline from barely on track to more stable, with flexibility. Now it's important to stay grounded. Because building and maintaining this kind of system requires effort. Time to learn, time to create, time to refine. There will be periods where progress feels slow, moments where results are inconsistent. Let's slow this down. This is not about perfection. It's about persistence. You're building something alongside your existing responsibilities, so the pace will be gradual. And that's okay. Because the goal is not speed, it's sustainability. And over time, that consistency becomes the advantage. So how can one income system change your retirement timeline? Not by transforming everything overnight, but by adjusting one key variable in a meaningful way. Let's slow this down one last time. You don't need to completely rebuild your financial plan. You don't need to rely on uncertain outcomes. You simply introduce a second system, one that generates consistent income and reduces pressure on your savings. And over time, that small adjustment creates flexibility. Options. Stability. So instead of asking, "Do I have enough to retire on time?" you might begin asking, "What can I build that allows me to rely less on what I've already saved?" Because that question doesn't just change your numbers, it changes your approach. And in many cases, that's what shifts the timeline.